Hello, hello. I see that everyone's pretty much off camera, which is fine. But I did want to let folks know because usually these are not recorded, but this one will be recorded. Hey, Miss Annette. This one will be recorded, so just wanted to state that at the outset because that's not our norm. But thank you all so much for being here. I think we're just going to get started because even though there are a lot more folks that registered, this is being recorded, so folks can watch the playback. But thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Um, and let me go ahead and share my screen. I don't know if you all have seen this thing that people are doing now. Oh, I need to share my screen properly. Um, where like for people who like are trying to get their friends to like do this PowerPoint presentation thing. Have you all seen this? I know I'm not the only one. So like there's like a whole life update thing um that I was like, it would be really cool if everyone who comes to WTF were to do a presentation of their year. Um, because I can only imagine everything that we would learn from each other. I don't know why this thing is showing from the very end. Sorry. My PowerPoint wants to get to the party part. Okay, so I feel like I've met everyone who's here, but like I was saying, it would be really cool. I don't know, maybe this is an idea for next year, for everyone that comes to WTF to do something like this. But this is the WTF recap that really came out of I was making my annual impact report for one of the fiscal sponsors, and they were like, "You should share this with other people because you all know me, I'm a nerd." So it's like there's a lot of details in the annual report. So I wanted to share some of the things that we have done together as a community. And as always, before we get started, I wanted to get us started with a grounding. And the first poem that I wanted to share, I've really been leaning into poetry recently as another source of inspiration. I think like this has been quite a year. And I feel like I've had to explore every form of inspiration possible. And poetry in the last couple months has really been a main one. I'm not sure if this link has an audio. Um, and I would ideally like to share the author of this poem reading it in her own voice. The poem is Once the World Was Perfect, and the author is Joy Harjo. So let me update my screen sharing to share audio. And then you all tell me if you can hear it.
Once the world was perfect.
Did you hear that? Can someone let me know?
Yes,
Because I can't. Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay, awesome.
Once the world was perfect, and we were happy in that world. Then we took it for granted. Discontent began a small rumble in the earthly mind. Then doubt pushed through with its spiked head, and once doubt ruptured the web, all manner of demon thoughts jumped through. We destroyed the world we had been given for inspiration for life. Each stone of jealousy, each stone of fear, greed, envy, and hatred put out the light. No one was without a stone in his or her hand. There we were, right back where we had started. We were bumping into each other in the dark, and now we had no place to live, since we didn't know how to live with each other. Then one of the stumbling ones took pity on another and shared a blanket. A spark of kindness made a light. The light made an opening in the darkness. Everyone worked together to make a ladder. A Wind Clan person climbed out first into the next world, and then the other clans, the children of those clans, their children and their children, all the way through time, to now, into this morning light to you.
I really like that one. And this next poem is by, uh, I fangirl about my friends. And so this is a friend that has a huge body of work that constantly inspires. Lexis also has a book that just came out that centers on Audre Lorde's poetry. And this is a poem that was made as a part of a collective project. It was made by the participants of the Already Been Done, an ancestral listening workshop from Black Feminist Film School. And as soon as I saw this, I thought of each of you. And I was like, we're gonna write a poem together next year because this really, really, like, I feel like each line made me think about someone different in the WTF community. So here is Abundance Poem. We have more than enough power. We have more than enough energy. We have more than enough light. We have more than enough wisdom. We have more than enough memory. We have more than enough protection. We have more than enough power to manifest what we want and repel what seeks to harm us. We have more than enough love. We have more than enough love to go around. We have more than enough connection. We have more than enough connection to love. We have more than enough mothering touch. We have more than enough time. We just have to make space. We have more than enough time. We have more than enough space. We have more than enough joy. We have more than enough stories and courage to heal our worlds. We have more than enough fire. We have more than enough peace. We have more than enough activation. We have more than enough meaning. We have more than enough sweetness. We have more than enough laughter. We have more than enough beauty. We have more than enough kitchen tables. We have more than enough reasons to love ourselves as we are. We have more than enough clarity. We have more than enough gentleness. We have more than enough compassion for ourselves. We have more than enough intimacy. We have more than enough reverberation. We have more than enough music. We have more than enough audacity. We have more than enough breath. We have more than enough examples. We have more than enough bridge. We have more than enough capacity. We have more than enough illumination. We have more than enough poetry everywhere. We have more than enough community. We have more than enough pathway. We have more than enough guidance. We have more than enough guidance. We have more. We have more than enough. I feel like I just, do you all see why I made me think of you? It's something that I think is so important. Are you able to see the slides again?
No, not yet.
No. Okay, so let me reshare. Um, we've talked a lot about, the horrors of 2025. And I think that one thing that this space has represented to me, um, is that we are a community that is abundant. And we're always um, reminded of that when we're together. And this year has been such a challenging one in so many ways. And there are so many reasons that I have to be grateful. Um, and so, you know, how people always do their whole presentation and then they do the thank yous at the end. I really wanted to start with the thank yous because I am so grateful for all of you. Every day, I feel like being a part of WTF community gives me a reason to be hopeful and optimistic and excited every single day, despite the policies, the administration, the courts, all of the things that I have had to translate and share, be the bearer of truths that I didn't always want to be the bearer of as we watch the ways in which we understand our institutions to work really, really being questioned and challenged during this time. And so I'm really grateful to the donors who before there was even a WTF, there were folks that were like, how can we support the work that you're doing? And so I'm not going to list out every single person, but there were donations of time, of thought partnership, financial resources. So many people shared something, especially the executive order tracker. That was kind of the call to action for me to think through ways to continue to support what this community was asking for. And so I had to give a very special thank you to very, very dear friends, mentors, sisters, all of the things, Rachel Bagby and Laura Lesher, who if it wasn't for them, really, truly, none of this would have happened. They were the ones who really told me that this opportunity that was being created by the folks asking questions about the executive orders and the tracker and the policies in the courts, that there was a there. And so they really, really doulaed this process and would not have been possible without the donors and my two dear friends. I also want to thank the fiscal sponsors. And for those of you who have wondered how I am able to support myself and my child, because Land and Liberation LLC is my firm. And the reason that that firm came into existence was primarily doing policy advocacy work with clients, as well as risk mitigation and some donor organizing and providing technical assistance and some legal technical assistance to grantees of a variety of foundations that I was supporting. And so a big part of how I've been able to do all of the whether it's WTF, Village Farmer Fund, or Safety Net work has been because I had fiscal sponsors that weren't afraid of all the threats that came in the beginning of the year. Folks that recognized that this administration was going to target anyone that was working on keeping folks that are in vulnerable communities safe, immigrants, queer folks, small scale farmers, everyone that we are in community with in WTF was definitely targeted as a part of the beginning of this year. And so these are the folks that from very early on said that they would be willing to stand up with this project and this process. So thank you so much to Circle of Life Connection, Philanthropic Ventures Foundation, and of course, National Family Farm Coalition. Niaz was one of the first people to text me on like January 21st when I was putting out the executive order tracker and just ask me how I was doing and offering support. So very, very grateful to the fiscal sponsors that made this work possible. And then, of course, the advisors, two of whom I've already named that are more informal advisors, but the official advisors of the project, the Safety Net for the Future of Village Farming, Niaz, Fran, Grace, Aita. They're just there was no hesitation from any of them when this was just an idea of something that could be helpful to farmers and their communities of support. And as each iteration and opportunity came along to create additional resources and share resources with farmers and community organizations, they were right there to make sure that there was a lot of solidarity built into the decision making and all of the challenges that could and would come up. And so I'm really, really grateful to all of the advisors and, of course, the team. Um, I try to make a practice of letting my team know how much they mean to me on a regular basis. And then I think that it's probably one of those things where like when you have like a stage 10 clinger mom and you just get tired of them telling you how much they love you. Like I feel like my team might be at that point with me. But honestly, without Raylan, Ashay, Sarah, Cindy, Adama, Justin, and Lena, like literally, like you all know that I've been on the road, I've been traveling, I moved to a different country. So much of what became the learning resources of the safety net were the result of the labor of love of these peoples. Raylan's leadership is legendary, and super grateful that when she graduated from graduate school, she was willing to take a chance on a job that didn't even have a job description at the time. And then I wanted to name that Cindy is staff for NAMA and NFFC, but she's been the person holding down like all of our financials. And then Adama, Justin, and Lena are officially with Our Space World, another partner organization, and we share their staffing. And so could not, would not do this again without these folks. And I'm so, so grateful to you all for coming along when, I want to specifically name that so many folks were in a stage of like, am I going to have a job? Is my organization going to lose funding? Am I going to be able to continue to do work that's meaningful to me? And the team never questioned their commitment to service. And so I'm just really grateful, really, really grateful that before the resources even actually hit, they were there standing ready to support all of you all. So thank you so much to the team. And then this part of the presentation, I wanted to jump into our impact report. It will be available. This is the final-ish version of the impact report, but I wanted to share with you all some of the highlights of what we've been up to as the safety net for the future of village farming. Okay. And you all can see the report, right?
You might have to make it to where just the slides are shown instead of side by
Okay,
side.
let me fix that. Is that better?
Yeah, it's full screen now.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, um, so WTF, right? Like what is the name of this thing and what is the mission? Like it's had so many names, Land and Liberation, WTF, Safety Net. And we've used those things really interchangeably. And I will say that some of that is intentional, and then some of it is completely not intentional, and possibly confusing. So I wanted to kind of just take this opportunity to name that Land and Liberation is Dania Davy, my firm, and it was what existed at the beginning when the resources started to become developed. And it wasn't until there were resources that there started to be branding of other things. WTF is the educational component that is rooted in the executive orders. And so the mission for WTF is really to bring folks together to help understand the impact of these legal challenges and how those affect the small scale farmers, nonprofit organizations that support them. Um, and the safety net is kind of the umbrella, I would say, of the work that Land and Liberation does, the charitable educational work that Land and Liberation does, and then the WTF and Village Farm Fund. So our mission is to provide a wide range of educational resources for farmers, land stewards, and the community-based organizations that serve them. To advance this mission, Land and Liberation maintains an educational website, distributes a weekly educational newsletter, and hosts events that support and educate farmers, land stewards, and broader networks about the issues that impact them most. So you've already seen the team. I wanted to share some numbers about impact because our team is small, but our impact was mighty. We have over 1,100 subscribers to the newsletter. We had over 2,000 people visit the WTF Federal Funding Resources educational website, which to me is amazing because I just saw this video about how millennials have never had any stability in our adult lives. So we self-soothe by working. And whenever I look at that website, that's exactly how I feel. That website was born out of pure anxiety about the future of this country. And to know that 2,000 people found it helpful. I don't know if that's a good thing because it kind of validates that overproducing as a millennial, has its role in the movement. But just really grateful that folks have been finding it to be something useful. We've tried to really make it less like my brain dumping all of this thing onto the internet. But I think because of the broad spectrum of people who come to the WTF spaces or submit questions through the FAQ link, it's really hard to try to remove anything because it kind of appeals to different subsets of the community. But if you have recommendations on how to make the website less like a lot, the team and I would really welcome those recommendations. We sent out almost 7,000 emails, and pretty close to as many that were sent out were actually opened, which I'm also very shocked about personally, that folks continue to read these resources that we're sending out. So honored that those resources have been helpful to folks. We've hosted 35 webinars or meetings. And then the educational videos that we've put out have had over 1,100 views. More numbers. Really excited about the zines. That was something that I've always wanted to be like an artistic, creative person, which I absolutely am not. And the zines were always this thing that I hoped would be something that could be like kind of look cool and also provide information that would be useful. And I'm really excited that over 500 people accessed the nonprofit Attack Mythbuster zine. That was a huge number of folks. And then we had 192 people access the Community Care Resources zine. That one is the one that came out to address the issues related to the SNAP cuts and the funding when the funding was frozen during the government shutdown. And 192 people have looked at the zine itself, but on the Instagram post that has all of the pages of that zine, almost 4,000 clicks for that particular resource. And so it just kind of validates for us that folks are continuing to see relevance of the resources that we're putting out and connecting across the silos of our movement is something that continues to be of appeal to a lot of folks. So excited about that. And then about 250 people have looked at the We Are Each Other's Keepers zine, and that is the one that's about safety, in particular around folks who are or may become vulnerable to immigration, aggression because of this current administration. We also in the course of the year put out a mutual aid and defense compact. This was around the time that the government was going to just put us all on every list and cross list, which I guess is going to be an ongoing thing. And one of the things as a lawyer, just watching how captured our court is and watching the failures of our legal system, it really had me thinking about what does our Constitution mean in this era? What does it look like to have laws and contracts based on what we are seeing become how our Constitution is interpreted when for so many years we've all thought that there were particular ways of understanding how the Constitution would be interpreted. And so one of the ideas that we've really been thinking about are what are those contracts? What do those documents look like that help us to come to agreements and form agreements amongst ourselves? Because at the end of the day, we have each other's backs in so many ways. We saw that over the course of this year. We saw so many organizations coming together to support each other, to help folks get rehired, get resources redistributed, to continue the mission work of our organizations. And so to see 47 organizations and individuals willing to sign on to that compact, I thought was exciting. We'd love to have more folks sign on to it. It's still on the website. But I think I'd like to see us experimenting more with compacts and contracts that are based on our mutual understandings, our solidarity, the friendship and trust that we're building amongst ourselves as a community. And we've had 27 states represented in the WTF webinar and meeting registration. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of hitting a lot of different issue areas that's relevant to the community and then making it relevant to people living pretty much all across the country. I've already mentioned that the main projects of the Safety Net for the Future Village Farming are the We're the Future educational website, the weekly newsletter, and the webinars and meetings. And I did want to share that there has been an intake process, and the thinking behind an intake process was, you remember when it was a little while ago, but remember when we thought we were all going to lose our jobs? It's not funny. I don't know if it's too soon to laugh, but as I was developing this, I was remembering how much anxiety I felt and how much of what this vision was shaped by was panic and fear. fear that the longstanding advocacy organizations that have always been there, Farm Aid, National Sustainable Ag Coalition, National Family Farm Coalition, National Young Farmers Coalition, National Black Food and Justice Alliance, SAFON, like Heal Food Alliance. I mean, the list can go on and on and on, but our groups, our fam was definitely in that fear space in my brain of like, how do we continue to support our folks? Because as you all know, when folks call in distress and they don't get a call back, even if your funding was paused by the government, that doesn't give a person that's in distress any comfort that they didn't receive a call back or an email back. But the reality is that there were folks that were changing their work structures because there was no way to pay staff. And so this intake process became somewhat of a placeholder, a really tiny band-aid for being a placeholder for supporting some of our organizations as they were going through their processes of assessment of capacity. And so we have the link on our website. We shared it during WTF, but we were able to assist on 19 matters, and there were 14 states that were represented by those intakes that we conducted. We received a total of 23, and a couple of them have not yet been closed out. But we did get folks from intake to closing letter on 19 of those. And what are some of the requests for assistance that we received? There were a broad variety, as you can imagine, of needs that folks were asking for support on. We received requests for support on applying for grants or government services, loss of funding, managing a current grant, disaster assistance, referral to a professional service provider, referral for direction to educational resources and or other types of training, support, or technical assistance. When I say professional service provider referrals, that also included folks who were considering hiring an attorney to file a lawsuit against the government with regard to the contract being terminated for one of the federal grants that were terminated at the beginning of the year. And so we were working with partner organizations to get referrals to attorneys. But for folks who, for a good little while, Lawyers for Good Government was just super backlogged. And so some folks were coming to us, and we were relying on the attorney referral networks that I'm a member of to help get folks connected to legal services and resources through our intake process. So folks may not know that this was a part of the work, but these are the matters that the cases that the team was working on this year. I see that there's some questions in the chat. So when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see them. So I'm going to take a really quick pause on sharing my screen to see if now is a good point for folks who have questions.
No questions, just praise in the chat.
Oh, I love you all. Okay. So let's go back to the tour stops, and I'm gonna go really in depth on the tour stop partners. But this is the list, and like I said, the link to this document is going to be made available to everyone. But these are the folks that we were able to visit with this summer, and some others as well. And so a good chunk of our time together today will be sharing back out with you all about some of those visits. But I also have to express deep gratitude to every single group that is on this list because This was really a harebrained idea that I had. I was in the shower one day, and I was like, I think Beyonce was on tour and Taylor Swift was on tour. See, when I say we have enough audacity, we is me. I'm talking about me. The fact that I was thinking about the the Taylor Swift and Beyonce tours and saying like, oh, I should go on tour too, just shows how much audacity Jamaicans have. Um, but the groups that are on this page, some of them had never met or heard of me before. And I just basically cold called or like through friends of friends reached out and I was like, hey, can I come set up a tent on your farm and visit with people in your community? And every single one of them was like, absolutely yes. And some of them had heard of WTF. Most of them had seen the zines that had been going out through a whole bunch of the advocacy organizations that were sharing them out. So at least there was like one original point of contact. But I honestly, like when I got to these places, I was like, you all really trusted a complete stranger in 2025. I think that is, it gave me so much hope. Gave me so much hope about community and solidarity that we could build trust and community that rapidly. Because, like I said, some of these folks, I reached out to them with very short notice, and they were all gracious and accommodating and wonderful. And I'm excited to share more about those visits and what the next steps will be with those groups as well. I mean, I can share the budget that we have and folks can look at the breakdown. As you'll see, this when folks have asked me about supporting my work, I'm a person that has a very unhealthy relationship with money. I have a strong desire to just give it away and not have it. And so, one of the things that I had to really um, think about is the labor, in particular, the labor of the team, because when this process was envisioned, it was very labor light in terms of investments. And I think that there are ways that we can think of a solidarity economy where the team doing the labor gets the support that they need to live their lives. And so one thing that I know is a learning and an opportunity for myself and maybe for others as we're envisioning what our solidarity economy looks like, that we'll really be thinking more about how to make sure labor and the type of organizing labor that goes into supporting historically excluded and underserved communities, and not undercutting that. And so the majority of the resources went towards the groups that allowed us to host um, meetings with them as a part of the tour, and as well as some stipends to partners that supported the work over the course of the year. And so that is our impact report. As I said, I'll be emailing it out to everyone as a PDF, but I wanted to share that out with you all because literally the content is based on a question that one of you asked me. We did not design anything out of what expertise was on the team. Every resource, every link, every aspect of the webinars and the website, those were all directly reflective of uh, the broad insight you all had to ask the types of questions that would be generative and help other farmers and supporters along the way. So thank you all for being a part of making these resources something that is relevant to so many people in our communities. And I'll also see if there any questions right now? Any questions yet? Okay. Um, so like I said, I do want to share a lot of the information about the farm tour stop specifically. And I just want to say that one of the things about the audacity that I had was that I also did not do a very good job of taking pictures. So I'm just gonna name like so okay, so this is a deep share, and I don't know if other people can relate to this. When I was a child, I went to visit my aunt and uncle, and they live in Grand Cayman. And my aunt took me downtown, and this woman had just come off of one of the cruise ships. And she came over to my aunt and asked her if she could take a picture of me and a picture with me, a complete stranger. And that experience, um, like I don't know, it did something, and I just saw it. Like I'm here in Jamaica right now. I was just at Devon House a couple days ago, and I saw a tourist go up to a family and ask them if she could take a picture with their baby. And and I was like, okay, so this is not an isolated incident thing. And what I'll say is one of the things that that did for me is make me really conscientious about the things that I document through pictures. So I'm really wary, even with permission, I'm always really wary about taking pictures of people's farms and taking pictures of people specifically. Because not just the safety issue, which is a huge issue, right? Like there's a huge, these farms that we were visiting are folks who are vulnerable. These are folks who are trying to figure out how to create their own underground railroad networks of safety and security for the most vulnerable people in their communities. And so it wasn't for, it wasn't that I didn't want to take pictures, but that was a thing that was very present in my mind. And I will also say that one of the people or peoples that I should have thanked in the very beginning was my ancestors. And um, my ancestors showed up and showed out so many ways this year. Like it's kind of put me in this. I've shared it for folks who've come to WTF. Like this year, something spiritual has started to happen in my life that I don't think that I necessarily anticipated. And I think partially like camping on farms and just like crashing on people's farms for extended periods of time, being in nature, hiking a lot over the course of this year, being really connected to the land and spending some deep intentional time with some indigenous elders kind of brought into my awareness a lot more mindfulness around storytelling and just dignity and just making sure that when we're raising resources for and with people, I just always want to practice being extremely mindful about like documenting people's experiences. And so I probably should have worked with like a consultant to like figure out how to take pictures in a more thoughtful way. But that's just that's just the caveat that I'll lead with before going on to the pictures. Okay, so I don't think I shared my screen. One second. Okay, can y'all see the screen?
Yes, I can see it. It's side by side with your video.
Awesome. So, maybe I should make it full, full photo. Can you just see the pictures now?
Yeah, now it's full screen. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. So so the very first tour stop um was in Alabama. And I have to say that before I arrived, this was definitely the biggest learning opportunity tour stop because I was just like, I'm coming with vibes. And it just so happened that they had planned this amazing event that they were already hosting, paper making and seed sharing and visioning for the first grocery store that that community was going to have in decades. And Fountain Heights Farms is just a powerhouse in its community. And so it was so humbling to stumble upon their excellence, and for them to allow me to participate in the space. I brought my parents with me, and when we were leaving, um, my dad was like, I think this is the first time that I actually understand like what you do for a living, and could kind of see like why you're so inspired in working with farmers and co-ops, and saw like that passion come to life. And so I'm really grateful to Fountain Heights for being the first tour stop and for allowing the you know crashing of your party. It rained on that day, and folks were still out. This is after it rained, and folks were still there and supporting. And so really, really excited and inspired by the work that Fountain Heights is leading there in Alabama. Um, my next stop was at Tierra Negra Farm in Durham, North Carolina. This is a farm that is near and dear to my heart because I've known the principal stewards and the main partners that own that land collectively for a very long time. They're very close friends and family, and it was just a dream to see. Like I was there when this was a conversation. I was there when this was a dream. I was there when this was a vision. And then to now be there over a decade later and see like the harvest, to see the community fridge and there was an African dance class happening there, and it was just incredible to visit with them and see the amazing work that they've been doing together for a really long time. And I also got a lot of tea on how to address and approach funding for farmers and capital for farmers, because these are farmers that have been doing the running a farm business, running multiple co-ops and collectives for a really long time. And so you'll hear and you'll see that a lot of what this tour inspired were different ways to think about how to get our farmers resourced. Right after Tierra Negra, I went up to New York and I got the chance to finally visit Soulfire Farm. If you get a chance to visit all of these farms, I'm telling you right now, your life will be made better for it. Soulfire Farm was hosting their solstice event, and so there was music, there was dancing, there was camping, there were all these amazing things. But I remember when I took this picture, I just remember like looking at how beautifully maintained this village is. And this is another group of people that have been working together and building their business collectively for a really long time. And so I was really honored to get to spend time there. as a part of the tour. And it was just really cool that while I was there, there were all these other, there was like all sorts of performances and concerts and everything, which was amazing. So definitely check out their solstice. It happens every year. If you're in the New York area or if you travel up to New York, you will have a great time. Right after that, I got to go to one of my favorite places, y'all. Butterfest is such a vibe. They have an entire like trailer painted to look like a stick of butter. And there was a lot of abundance at this gathering. It was so diverse, it was intergenerational. I danced in a barn for the first time. Grace Odell, the executive director of NOFO Vermont, is one of the visionaries and stewards of this event. And I really liked this quote that they had there, celebrating the fat of the land and the richness of being together. And what I really loved when they were sharing their origin story was that this was also a COVID dream, of what would be a celebration that could bring folks together to really be in a celebratory space. Um, and they definitely have been doing a good job of making that a special space. And if you've ever been to Vermont and had a creamy, you know that it's really like really good. Well, they bought they bought a creamy machine, so I ended up eating like way too much creamy, but it was worth it. And so that is another annual event that I would highly recommend folks checking out. Tuckaway Farm is one of the farms that literally they didn't know me. They had, they had no reason to trust me, and they gave me an entire yurt to camp in. And it's a multi-generational farm, and it's in New Hampshire. And I think that, one of the memories that I have that's really sticks out to me about that visit was I got to go to a Quaker meeting. And it was in that stage of like all of these like spiritual awakenings were happening as I was going along the tour, and the vision that Tuckaway Farm has for how to use the farm to keep their community safe was extremely inspiring. We had two events as a part of the tour stop because they have multiple groups of communities that they work with. And so they wanted to accommodate working people and people that had non-traditional work schedules. And so it was really amazing to get to be there with them. Zuriwingi Garden is one of the gardens I did not take a picture of. I will say that the garden itself is on Tuckaway Farm, and it's a part of a collaborative land stewardship process. And it's also a seed saving farm that is doing some really rad things and was bringing out community to do a lot of work. And there were a lot of people working the garden when I was there, and I was trying to be mindful of not taking pictures because you know how it is. It's hot and they're we're sweaty. So, but the reason that I took this particular picture is that the steward of Zuriwingi Garden and I did had a sauna experience where I almost died because I did not know how hot those things get. If you've never done this, I don't know if I should say you should do it, but we realized very quickly that the people that do this on a regular basis, they're not like us. Like there's something magical about being in that much heat. And so I get it. I get the allure, but like the first few minutes of it, I really was like, I have a heart condition. I should not. I didn't sign any release or waiver or anything, and I have a heart condition. But it was really a once in a lifetime experience. I don't know that I would do it again. But I do feel now very trauma bonded to this space and this place. And also I also felt like I would like to understand better about the cultures that use intense heat as a part of their communing with the divine and nature and spirit, because I definitely felt like my human limits were pushed in that experience. I had to do a shout out for the Herbal Hummingbird Hub because this is an entire apothecary, y'all. Like that's all plant medicine. And the farm itself has place for people to come and learn and reside and be a part of all of the incredible medicine making and distribution work that's happening there. And I just it's like a full on like science lab that I definitely asked for if I could take pictures of this, but the principal steward said she would want every farm to have an apothecary on it, and she wants to help everyone learn how to do that because she knows how to navigate all of the hoops to do so. So definitely for all my medicine makers, all of my folks that are interested in that, the link to the Herbal Hummingbird Hub is on the Safety Net Investments website. So definitely check it out. They also offer retreats at this space and other types of learning opportunities. So it is in Maine, so it's kind of, up there for a lot of the folks that are on the southeast, but or in the west. But it's definitely worth a visit. Somali Bantu Community Association, also in Maine. I tried and I asked if I could take more pictures, but this is one I feel like the ancestors were blocking. This is a group of people who are really doing agriculture in line with our ancestral stewardship practices. It was a completely community centric space. There were plots that are no cost to the community just for folks who want green space to grow whatever they want. You can just come out as a community member and just enjoy the garden, relax in the garden, learn how to plant. They are willing to give seeds to anyone in the community that wants to come and learn how to grow food. And on top of that, there are like 100 commercial farmers on this lot. And so they're able to do things like sell to main grains, and become a very sustainable farming operation while keeping the community's needs at the center. And I found that to be extremely inspiring. I really appreciated that I got to see some of the farmers that were using techniques from the continent, and so I really gained a lot from the visit with the Somali Bantu Association. I don't necessarily think they gained as much from me, but I definitely learned a lot while spending time with them. Helcom Farm is another farm that's in Vermont. It's a small family farm that is actually in like a suburb. Like I think you probably can see the house in the background. This farming operation is so precise, so beautiful. And their neighbors, like, just like their normal neighbors, like not like they're not in an intentional living community or anything like that. Like just their regular neighbors help them with their farm, which I thought was so incredible. Because most people can't stand their neighbors. And still here's this family that is building such a beautiful vision of what it looks like to feed their local community, that they've deepened relationships with their actual community. And it actually, like, really for me highlights that, so much of building community is like talking to your neighbors. And I think that that's something that we've said a lot in the WTF space, that the culture that we're in of just going to work, going home, and zoning out doesn't always lend itself to building those organic relationships with neighbors. But Kelcom Farm was one that really stood out as practicing that your neighbors, and your neighbors are your community and can be a part of your farm, when the relationships are right. And then I'm almost done, and I'm going to let Raylan share about her part of the tour as well. But another farm in Vermont was Knoll Farm. That one I did as a part of the Better Selves Fellowship. And if you want to know more about the fellowship or about any kind of retreats or workshops happening at Knoll Farm, we observed silence in the morning. And this was yet another of those really deeply spiritual experiences that I had the opportunity to have. The Center for Whole Communities started at Knoll Farm. So there's just a lot of history of folks coming together in retreat, and being on a beautiful sheep farm really, really helps with kind of detaching from all of the distractions that kind of keep our minds away from our higher callings and higher purposes. The Wild Seed Catalyst Collaborative, and I'm also going to go to the next slide. Rock Steady and Sweet Freedom Farm are a part of the Weebatuck Collective, and we all met together when I was there. Each of these farming spaces has a beautiful story, and is definitely doing all of the things like abolition and centering the needs of, families who go to visit. There's a prison not far away, and so they have reflection space and retreat and healing space, and they're also like productive farms as well, and doing some really, really great collective work. They're in close proximity to one another, and they're just deepening in their ways of approaching sharing, resource sharing, not just financially, but in all of the ways. And they're really being intentional about building their relationships first, and then building out the business. And I'm really excited to be in community with them. Cannon Flow Farm in North Carolina. That was such a treat to get to visit a farm that is in my home state, my claimed home state of North Carolina, that has such a deep legacy of what it looks like when there's solidarity and community. So the original stewards of this land were Quakers, and they sold it to the principal steward's ancestor, I think great grandparent. And so the family is still like around the farm. The family cemetery is not far from there, and the extended family members also help with the labor on the farm. And so I was really excited about this one. I was grateful to Rafi's Farmers of Color Network for showing up. I was grateful because so many families that I've worked with over the years of working on heirs property. Now, this is not an heirs property situation. This is a family that did the planning, and has done everything needed to keep it in the family. But I'm always asked by families in heirs property situations where they don't get along, or they can't figure out how to get everyone on the same page about the farm. And so this is a farm that is doing it. They're doing the family intergenerational management of land that's been in the family for generations. And so that is another really another space where, like I said, I feel like I learned so much from the principal steward in the visit there. Comunidad Maya Pictionik Shim is a Mayan community that stewards land. They have about 4 land holdings. I was able to visit each of them with them while I was there. And then they were having their Indigenous People Summit where I was able to lead a couple processes, um, and and help to start the conversation about what would all of the Indigenous groups that were present at that gathering, what would a compact amongst those groups look like. So we started the dialogue around what is like a, not an MOU or a contract, but what are the things that we can put in place that we enforce amongst ourselves, and found that to be a really, really spiritually and, you know, stewardship wise and decision making and governance, just their deeply indigenous ancestral approach toward dialogue and agreement, was a huge source of inspiration for me. And whoa, I still have more. Okay, I'm gonna have to speed up because I'm okay. Sorry to Minnesota because I'm gonna have to do this really quickly. But Zoe of Midwest Farmers of Color Collaborative allowed us to stay at their Root Springs farm, which library, hello. Of course, I'm going to show that as the picture, but also their 2 members, 40 Acre and Colomo, shared their farms with us. I wanted to highlight that 40 Acre, we're standing in front of their future store location. They have a cannabis production farm to customer operation. And this building they just bought, they're rehabbing it and it will be their storefront. So that was extremely exciting to visit with. In Kilomo, we had lots of conversations around the various cooperatives and the different models, and in particular, how does a farm go from being an incubator of new and beginning farmers and become something that's a sustainable business that isn't just the only location for all of the farms and co-ops that they support. Okay, and now and now I'll pass it over to Raylan. And Raylan, do you want me to keep sharing my screen or do you want to share your screen?
You can keep sharing
Okay, cool.
just to keep things smooth and simple.
Okay.
So I got to wrap up the tour. I got to visit Minnesota with Dania, and then California was a solo trip because a hurricane decided to come and do the things that a hurricane does. But the first stop of that weekend was I got to visit Agroecology Commons, which was absolutely amazing. They have healed this land to the point where the otters are coming back to splash and splish in the creek behind the property. They have a multi-use um expansion of the land. There's a couple of different land projects that are going on. But agroecology is the one that I got to spend time with, and be in community with, and they were absolutely amazing. The work that they're doing with other institutions in the area is really a good model to understand what can happen if you aren't necessarily afraid, of having community with some of these larger institutions in a way that serves both institutions in a mutually beneficial way, which they're able to do with a lot of the different UCs and whatnot. But absolutely insane. The photo you see here is their outdoor classroom that they have going on. It got built within this, I think, last year. And by the time, hopefully, we get to visit again in the next growing cycle, it will be covered with vines and leaves and grapes and all the things. But an absolutely amazing place to go visit and be in community with if you have an opportunity to do so. And then the other major thing I got to visit in California was California Farmer Justice Collaborative had the wonderful opportunity to attend the Rural Justice Summit. So California Farmer Justice Collaborative allows farmers of all different sizes, shapes, so on and so forth, to be in community with one another. And this is kind of culminated in this idea of what it looks like to be just for rural communities, led by Sister B, Brandy Mack. I got an opportunity to sit down with her on a couple different occasions, learned so much about Black and Brown communities and what they're going through, not only in California, but how that looks on like a national level, and how rural justice is it has some different flavors depending on where you are in our greater continental United States, but we're all kind of suffering with the same things. And this was an opportunity for people to get together and have those conversations in a really holistic way. I can't begin to explain the amount of intentionality that CFJC put into that event, from drum circles in the morning, blessings by everybody you could possibly think of, the opportunity to attend workshops, yes, but then an opportunity also to just be in community with one another, ask the questions that needed to be asked. And it was just amazing. If you have an opportunity to go, they are transitioning to a biannual meeting, so you know what to put on your schedule for 2027. But had a wonderful time, got an opportunity to visit a couple of their partners, and it was a wonderful wrap up to hopefully is part one and two and future parts of a tour.
Couldn't find my mute button. I'm so yeah, this was the biggest heartbreak. Hurricane Melissa um was not playing around, ruined my life, but I'm so grateful that Raylan was able to queue up. Like she said, there will be more tour more tour to come, and so really happy that the folks were accommodating of a last minute switch up. And so now you've heard us, you've heard what we wanted to share. And, one of the other things that, as I was reflecting and preparing the things, the stories that we wanted to highlight, I also want to hear from you all as well, because when we at WTF talk about this new world that we're envisioning together, all of the pieces of that new world require all of us. Like there's no skill set, right now, because Jamaica's rebuilding. One of the things that I tell folks who ask about volunteering is there's literally a need for every single skill set that you possibly would want to share. There's a part of the island that is starting from zero. And so I feel like it's almost like a metaphor of where we are with the US. We are in a place where there's so much of what we thought was legal or not legal that has been broken down and questioned and challenged in ways that we hadn't seen before, that now we get to have an opportunity to dream up something different. So I'm going to give you all 5 minutes um, on your own, and I'm going to ask you to share. You can just kind of reflect on your vision of the new world that we're building together. And in that 5 minutes, if you could think about how can WTF, the safety net, support your vision. And I am going to start that time now. Alrighty, so please feel free to share in the chat. No pressure, but we would love to hear from you all. What are some of the things that you're envisioning in this new world that we're building together, and how the safety net can support that vision? And we'll probably send a follow-up survey to try to give some words to that. But if you had some thoughts during your 5 minutes and you want to share in the chat, we would love to see those, because this is the part of the presentation where I want to share about what comes next. So what will 2026 look like for WTF? And I think a big part of what it will look like is the Village Farmer Fund launching. You've heard us talking about it. If you come to WTF, you know that those farms that we highlighted on the website, the ones that are listed in the annual report, they will be participating in this participatory process of getting resources to their communities of support. So during the time with the farmers, it became really, really apparent that all of these farms are truly, truly meeting their community's needs beyond just what they're growing. They are supporting, they're employing people, they're making sure that folks are getting other needs met besides just access to food. And so one of the ways that we want to see the impact of those farms multiplied and multiplied and multiplied is by investing in their stewardship of a mutual aid fund. So each of those farms is going to have their own parameters for how they redistribute the resources that they receive, but we're all basically thinking about ensuring that the most vulnerable people in our communities are being supported by these funds. And so we're going to each have local decision making, local guidelines, but we'll come together as a cohort to think about best practices, strategies. We'll also have from learnings being presented from groups that have had funds in the past. For example, the Somali Bantu Farmers has an immigrant farmer fund where they helped to replace the incomes of those farmers who had the local funding grant cut. They raised resources and then they paid those farmers directly who are expecting to be able to participate in those local purchasing opportunities. And so each of them has a different set of folks and parameters. And so there'll be lots to share about what we learned together as the Village Farm Fund cohort. One of the big things that I'm manifesting, and you all have heard me say it a million times, but I really want to think of all the ways to connect solidarity and mutual aid between village farmers in the US and Jamaica. As you know, I've been here in Jamaica helping with the Hurricane Melissa relief, and I've been spending time in those village farming communities that inspired the Village Farm Fund. So where I'm from in Troy, in Trelawney, it's one of the parishes that was really directly impacted by the hurricane. And in our parish, a lot of the farmers lost everything, homes, all of their everything that they were growing for the year. And so I think that there's so many ways that the climate catastrophe is neutralizing international boundaries. And so the learnings that it'll take for us to all become resilient in the modern era, I think is going to rely heavily on us sharing those learnings across those imaginary lines and amongst people that are the most directly impacted by climate catastrophe, the ones that are stewarding the land and growing food for their communities. We're also going to continue to support our solidarity economy with legal agreements that we govern. So based on some of the early legal needs that were expressed from the intakes, we realize that there's more and more appetite for folks to have templates and models and examples to refer to. And there are a lot of resources that are out there, but sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming to figure out which contracts and templates relate to your particular situation. So we want to make sure that some of the educational resources that we're sharing out for next year is really helping farmers to maintain compliance, but also thinking about how do we envision new types of coming together with agreements? What are other types of ways to hold each other accountable in our dealings with one another? Disagreements are going to come. How do we anticipate those without having to rely on taking folks to court, right? Or canceling people. And so that is one body of work that we're going to be expanding around the what people wish they knew about contracts and grants before they entered into them. And then another big one that has been requested in a lot of ways are what are the ways to increase civic engagement as the local level? As we know, a lot of the federal programs are going to be managed. For example, the insurance programs are going to be managed at the state level. A lot of the disaster programs are going to be managed at the state level, and they're increasingly opportunities for a state level farm bill as opposed to spending all of our time investing in advocacy around the federal level farm bill. So we want to make sure that folks are educated about how to advocate and how to navigate those state level entities and institutions to make sure that we're continuing to strengthen the safety net for our small scale farmers, land stewards, and the communities of support in the coming year. And unless there are any questions, I think we can go to the dance party section of our program. But Raylan, are there any questions in the chat?
No questions, just some suggestions, which I've copied over.